again. So I was thanking Alison for the introduction and saying how happy I am to be here at this prestigious National Press Club after 3 very busy days. I think 3, I lost count. 3 very busy days here in Washington with many meetings, many activities that I would like to talk to you about. Above all, I think this represents the continuation of our ongoing and very deep effort to create a new partnership between Brazil and the United States. It requires constant work. It requires the work of many people, like a large delegation of many colleagues from Brazil. We have so many different areas for cooperation. We really require that sort of integrated approach. Back in Brazil, almost every single ministry in the government is involved in some way or another with this building of a new partnership with the United States. There is something that touches every specific area, and all converging to what we think is, we're convinced, is the interest and the desire of the Brazilian people to finally have a relationship with the United States that we always considered to be something natural, but that was not pursued for a long time, at least not to the extent that we needed to contribute to Brazilian development, to building Brazil as a strong nation in the world. So over these days, well, today had I won't follow the chronological order. I'll talk first about the strategic partnership dialogue. That was, let's say, the anchor of my trip here to Washington. So this morning we had the first session of the strategic partnership dialogue in 7 years, and the first one in this new conception, in this new phase of our relationship. I had a meeting with Secretary Pompeo, and later on my colleagues had the more in-depth discussions with the American counterparts. The discussion involved, if I'm not mistaken, 3 undersecretaries from the Department of State and 3 secretaries of the same level from our foreign ministry. That also gives the dimension of the diversity and importance of the dialogue. We made a point, and refer to that. It's very important. I'll repeat that if you allow me. We want it to be a strategic dialogue in the sense that it's not only a collection of individual important initiatives, but it tries to be a system that makes sense, where initiatives in different areas feed each other and support each other and accelerate each other. We're convinced that this is the way to go when you have progress in areas like trade and investment. It facilitates progress in areas like energy, but also when you have progress in intelligence or security, that in a way or another ends by helping progress in trade, investment, and the economic area. So it all forms a whole, because countries are a whole. We, I think for a long time, were victims of dividing and fragmenting also the relationship with the United States. So not only we didn't have the political priority that I think it deserved, but it was organized in a fragmented way where it had individual dialogues without some sort of encompassing concept, and that's what we're trying to give it. I can maybe talk a little bit about some of the specifics of this dialogue. Investment in infrastructure was one of the main topics. We know how thirsty Brazil is today for investment in infrastructure. What's going on in Brazil is really an infrastructure revolution. We're catching up very fast with years or decades of neglect in that area. Energy, we talked a lot about. There's tremendous potential for interaction in that area. Also investment in biodiversity. We want to implement the initiative that was launched back in March when President Bolsonaro was here, in order to have a fund the $100 million fund for investment in projects involving biodiversity in the Amazon. By the way, we talked a lot about what is going on in the Amazon. We're trying to convey the reality of the facts on the ground, the dimension of the question of the situation of the fires in the Amazon, the efforts undertaken by the Brazilian government and some international cooperation in order to combat the fires, and overall our efforts to preserve the Amazon region, and very importantly our efforts to design and attract investment, design projects and attract investment to the region, projects of sustainable development that can create jobs, that can generate revenue for the 20 million Brazilians that inhabit the Amazon, which is the key, in our view, to the sustainable development and to the preservation of the forest. Just to give a few examples, we talked a lot about the cooperation in WTO, cooperation around SPS issues, where we have many common interests of not having SPS norms being used as protectionist measures. But jumping from there to another area, we discussed the question of religious freedom. Brazil and the US are, I think, among the countries that care the most now about this issue. The United States is launching, together with other countries, and Brazil wants to be a part of that, an alliance for religious freedom in order to promote that around the world where it is threatened. Regional issues, of course, mainly Venezuela. I hope one day, I hope it will be soon, we won't have to talk about Venezuela every time that we meet, but we're still not there. We are not backing down at all in any of our active and dynamic business community, American Brazilian business community. They are at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I'm convinced this is one of the most important assets that we have in the Brazil-U.S. trade and economic relationship. The business community, as I said, is very active. They have excellent ideas about what to do in order to facilitate trade, facilitate economic interaction, investing, and they seem to be, at least they told me, I think that's true, they are very enthusiastic about what we're doing in Brazil. I had the opportunity of speaking of our new trade agenda, which already gave us 2 new important trade agreements with the European Union and with EFTA, and overall the agenda of trade opening and having Brazil as a country that inserts itself in the global value chains in a much more dynamic way. Well, I mentioned already the question of religious freedom. I talked about that with Ambassador Brownback, who is the leading official for that project in the United States. It's something that speaks very dearly to the hearts of people in Brazil. Many Brazilians are concerned about the situation of religious minorities around the world, Christian minorities very especially, but not only those. So this is something that, another example of how we want to do things that are important for the Brazilian society, for the Brazilian people, going away from a certain tradition in Brazil of ignoring the desires of the people and doing things that are, let's say, sometimes important for other diplomats, but not important for real people. So I think I covered more or less at least much of the ground that we discussed over these days and many meetings. I hope not too many. It was again a very intense agenda that shows the I think the extraordinary level of interaction that we have today between the 2 countries. I'd like to come to the questions.
Okay, good. I will call on people for questions. I'm going to ask the first question. And could you please, one, wait for the microphone to come?
Sure.
State your name. Is there any timeline set up for a trade group in Brazil in the U.S.?
No specific timeline, but we want it to be soon, and we are not waiting for the moment we'll have a full-fledged trade agreement in order to do a lot of things in trade. We're already able and have been able along this year to have new initiatives, specific initiatives that benefit specific sectors, and we can't have more of those while we prepare the way and we discuss about the model that our trade agreement may have in the future. So, in a way, we're already negotiating. In the more generic use of the term trade agreement, we're already negotiating it. We're still not there in the specific of the text of well, this will be the trade agreement between the United States or between the 2 countries. But we're already working very hard on which I think we call this our trade package. That also involves the dimension of trade facilitation that basically the Commerce Department here and the Economy Ministry in Brazil are responsible for.
Yes? Okay. Hi. Tracy Wilkinson from the Los Angeles Times. Couple of things. You just now, from what you were saying and also what you said earlier today with Secretary of State Pompeo, seem to be emphasizing development of the Amazon, not protection of the Amazon. So my question is, what can you say to the world that really wants the Amazon to be protected? And my other question is about climate change. You have denied that climate change is a big problem. My question is, do you stand by that? And is that a position that Brazil will take to the UN General Assembly in 2 weeks? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. First of all, we are convinced that the best way to preserve and defend the Amazon forest is development. Development in the sense of creating jobs and opportunities for the people who live in the Amazon, so they don't have to resort to illegal activities which harm the forest. Basically, what we have today is a lot of illegal logging, for example, by people who have to resort to that because they don't have the jobs that are legal inside a sustainable framework. So, but all the instruments, all the legislation that we have, which is very strict to protect the environment, not only in the Amazon, across the whole country, is still in place. We won't change any piece of legislation. But what you have to do is to look at the reality and see that there is illegal activity. That is the only way to combat that. Of course, we announced, President himself announced in national TV a policy of zero tolerance towards environmental crime. But we need to create opportunities for the people. So when we talk about development in the Amazon, we're talking about the key to the preservation of the forest. And regarding climate change, I want to try to make very clear that what we have to make a distinction between what is the reality of climate change that is discussed in the appropriate panels and what is the ideological use of climate change in order sometimes to push for extreme measures that don't seem to be warranted by the situation, the real situation in the environment. So on the talk about having to question Brazilian sovereignty over the Amazon comes from that sort of hysteria where you assume there is a huge climate crisis about which the IPCC reports, for example, don't speak. But there's this buzz in the air about climate crisis, and you could also maybe this should lead us to intervening externally in the Amazon, for example. So we see very much how it works. You take things away from their proportion, and you advocate. Some people around the world advocate for measures that can only be contemplated in the state of emergency. That really
but extreme measures like what? What are you talking
like
about?
Like intervening in a country, in a sovereign country, for example.
Intervening how? I don't know.
convening meeting of the foreign ministers of the countries that are party to the treaty. No decision about what to do was made, but this doesn't imply at all the use of military force. The treaty provides for other measures to mutual assistance between countries that feel threatened by threats to security. So the fact that this was approved doesn't mean in any way that military action is being contemplated.
I'm Mara Jenks with the New York Times. You and Secretary Pompeo discussed the issue of Venezuela today. I'm wondering what steps are being considered now and to break the stalemate. And I'm also wondering, from here it looks like President Nicolas Maduro is not going to leave office anytime soon. I'm wondering what it looks like from your vantage point, if you're seeing any signs of him weakening or possibly considering stepping down. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we talked about that. The main step that we're taking now is exactly the discussion on the basis of the Inter-American Treaty, which provides for other measures that allow for sanctions and similar initiatives. We, in any case, are convinced that every legal pressure is good against that sort of nefarious regime that still holds some sort of power in Venezuela. We know that it's taking longer than we expected, but we think the regime is losing power by the day, in part because of the American sanctions, in part because of the international pressure that exists against them and for democracy in Venezuela. So it's a question of keeping that, typically keeping that pressure. We know that dictators normally don't give up by their spontaneous will and power, but we're convinced that truth and reason will prevail at some point, and that the despair of Venezuelans will find an issue out from that nightmare that they're living, and we hope to be able to contribute to that.
Obrigada, ministro. Vou fazer pergunta em português também. Is okay? Eu sou Raquel Carribu, da Globo News. Ministro, eu queria duas perguntas. Primeiro, se vocês discutiram a possibilidade de encontro entre Bolsonaro e Trump nas margens agora da Assembleia Geral da ONU. Pode responder essa primeiro?
Sim, tá. Não discutimos especificamente nessa ocasião, pode ser que ocorra, mas nós estamos trabalhando, espero que ocorra em algum momento em breve. Nós já tínhamos um convite do presidente Bolsonaro para uma visita do presidente Trump ao Brasil e temos a expectativa de poder, em algum momento, ter uma data para essa visita.
Seria esse ano?
Mas aí fosse mais cedo possível. We didn't talk today about a possible bilateral meeting between Presidents Trump and Bolsonaro at the margin of the General Assembly in New York, but we already transmitted the invitation from President Bolsonaro for President Trump to reciprocate his visit and visit Brazil shortly. We hope to find a date sometime soon.
Outra pergunta sobre a Amazônia, ministro. Você destaca bastante a soberania do Brasil em relação à Amazônia, rejeitou a ajuda dos europeus, então por que quer uma parceria com os Estados Unidos para desenvolver e explorar a Amazônia?
Claro. Não é que a gente rejeitou a ajuda dos europeus, inclusive nós aceitamos uma ajuda oferecida pelo Reino Unido recentemente. Nós o que achamos é que existe a necessidade de que qualquer ajuda internacional, que é sempre bem-vinda, mas que ela seja canalizada para realmente atender a situação real. Nós achamos que em muitos casos, há hoje em dia um certo modelo de cooperação que é feito através de ONGs e isso não é muitas vezes eficiente. Você não tem accountability, né? Não tem accountability, não tem transparência por parte muitas vezes dessas atividades e não vê resultados. Então, existe essa discussão sobre, por exemplo, a governança do Fundo Amazônia, que é uma iniciativa importante, mas que o ministro Ricardo Salles tem falado muito disso, a necessidade de que haja um processo mais eficiente. Então, não é que a gente seja contra novas ou antigas iniciativas de ajuda de países europeus, a gente deve ser muito eficiente.